Welcome to Studio 5. Here's what's ahead on today's show.
International cuisine with a southern flair.
This is gonna be delish.
Chef Deborah VanTrece delivers the Global Soul Kitchen.
Your goodness is running after me.
Grammy Award-winning artist CeCe Winans marks a musical milestone with a Tiny Desk concert. She's now with us at the start of her international tour. The Best Man series continues with an all-new chapter, a book. And Malcolm D. Lee is giving us the scoop.
And we begin with Chef Deborah VanTrece. She's the host of Global Soul Kitchen, and she's fusing soul food with an international flair. We head to the Studio 5 kitchen for this edition of Food for Thought.
This is gonna be delish.
I am Deborah VanTrece, a chef from Atlanta, Georgia.
Which came first, the love of food or the love of travel?
The love of food, that's an easy one, yes.
Through my travels, I've gotten the opportunity to experiment and try so many different cuisines.
The travel came as a result of, growing up in a city that I felt like I outgrew, and I wanted to get up out of there.
Bam! All cultures have comfort food. All cultures have soul food.
So we're now in season 2 of Global Soul Kitchen.
Yes.
What gave birth to this idea?
I wrote a cookbook during COVID. I wrote the cookbook prior to COVID, and it was released right in the midst of COVID. So as opposed to doing a book tour, I had to do a virtual book tour. One of the people who was hosting me was Rachel Ray. And after our conversation, Miss Rachel said to me, "You need a show." About 2-3 years later, they called me and said, "Okay, we're ready to film. When are you going to be ready to come?"
Love it. So how would you describe season 2?
Season 2 is a little bit more exciting.
A southern twist on a global dish.
I'm taking you to a few more destinations. We're going to Jamaica, we're going to South America in terms of the culinary recipes that I'm presenting. We're going to India, we're doing Germany. This one I really sat and thought about, what do I want the people to see? Where do I want to take them?
Where does this come from for you, merging soul food, especially with all these other cultures?
Meat pies were actually dishes that were served to royalty.
What's happening in that brain of yours to make this all come together?
Going into other countries and experiencing their markets, their grocery stores, their cuisine, I realized that the food that I grew up with that thought it was just soul food, it was just African American cuisine, this is what we eat, other people eat other things, and I saw that was not true. And that started me on a journey where, I wanted to experience more. I wanted to see, the different ways of cooking the ingredients that I grew up with. And from that, I started combining, what I grew up with the things I'd seen, the things I'd tried, the things that I'd eaten. And it was, somewhat of my way of showing, even my own family. My mom, she never made it to China. Well, let me bring China to you, Mom, and let me bring it to you in a way you'll understand it. So, that's where the mashup began.
Why do we have this relationship with food? I never thought we'd be watching 24 hours of food. Why do we love it so much?
It brings people together. I think they're very comforting. They definitely remind me of home. We celebrate with it, we grieve with it, just the feelings that it gives you and the way that it just brings us together is something that, it happens with all types of cuisine, no matter where you're at.
Season 2 of Global Soul Kitchen is available right now on the FYI Network. And still to come, Pastor CeCe Winans talks about her collaboration with Pastor Shirley Caesar.
To me, she is just pure royalty. I love that woman. I have loved her. I have watched her for many, many years. My mom and dad love Shirley Caesar. And she's always been a part of my home. She's always been a part of my life. And then when I got a chance to meet her and actually do things with her, my respect level went, just 10 times, 100 times higher.
Welcome back to Studio 5. CeCe Winans is not taking a rest following her annual women's conference. She's now preparing to hit the road for an international tour.
Sometimes I fall to my knees and pray. Come, Jesus, come. Let today be the day.
So CeCe, I can't even begin this interview without first asking you about you and Shirley Caesar. How did that happen?
Man.
Come, Jesus, come. We've been waiting so long.
You know, when they were talking about doing another, this is something that we do as artists nowadays. We did it some back when, but now doing different versions of songs. It's real popular at the moment. And so they told me they wanted me to do a couple of versions. And Stephanie, one of the wonderful girls on our team, she suggested Shirley Caesar. Now, when they first brought it up, I'm thinking, you guys probably want me to, connect with somebody who's new or young, or,
Right.
And when she said Shirley Caesar, I just said, oh.
There'll be no war, and there'll be no change.
To me, she is just pure royalty. I love that woman. I have loved her. I have watched her for many, many years. My mom and dad love Shirley Caesar. And she's always been a part of my home. She's always been a part of my life. And then when I got a chance to meet her and actually do things with her, my respect level went, just 10 times, 100 times higher, she's just so much fun. She's so much fun. So we had a great time. But that's how that came about. Somebody suggested her as the duet. And I was like, are you kidding me? I would just sit in there and wash her feet if I can. and trust me, I knew she would outsing me before she even got there. But I was looking forward to it.
I love it.
And she opened her mouth, man. She opened her mouth and it just oozed out of her. It was just like, because to me, if you put gospel singer in the dictionary, her name should be there.
Come, Jesus, come.
Am I hearing this correct? You're going on an international tour now?
Oh, yeah. It keeps going. It keeps going. Yeah, more than this. It was powerful. It's been powerful.
Your goodness is running after, it's running after me.
It's been powerful. And as bad as I want to stay home, I have enjoyed this tour, and people are requesting it everywhere. And my management, they already know I want to stay home. I want to be with these grandbabies, right? Yeah. They're nervous to even ask me, what do you think about international? And basically I'm not my own. And God has given me a gift, and not only a gift, but it's for such a time as this. I think everybody is seeing that, that for some reason he's entrusting me to represent who he is and to encourage people to worship him everywhere. It's very diverse, those who are coming out. So yeah, we're going international. And I'm excited about it. We actually got 2 legs of international touring this year. So pray my strength.
Yes, we do. I give you all the glory. All together, word. Hey, who we talking about?
CeCe CeCe Winans' international tour is set to begin this summer. Her first stop, the United Kingdom. Well, here is this week's Story in Pictures, your Studio 5 snapshot.
We take a moment to look at two lives well lived, although cut short. And we begin with Ananda Lewis. The pioneering BET host and MTV VJ has died. Lewis connected a generation of music fans to their favorite celebrities. But she lost her battle with breast cancer in recent days, at age 52. Next, we remember celebrity chef Anne Burrell. She's perhaps best known as co-host of the Food Network's Worst Cooks in America. Anne has died. Police say she was found unconscious and unresponsive at her Brooklyn, New York home Tuesday morning. Anne Burrell was 55.
And that is this week's Studio 5 Snapshot. And still to come here on Studio 5, the Best Man franchise is back in a whole new way. The Best Man Unfinished Business.
I think it's a reflection of us, of Black folks in America. It's a reflection of our humanity. There's a relatability to the characters, and I think, a lot of people have said to me that they find this group to be their close friends.
The Best Man Unfinished Business is the new novel serving up the continuing stories from the characters in that famous franchise.
I'm getting married.
It's gonna be just like old times. Only better, right?
So we now get ready to see the first of 3 books on the Best Man's series. When this began, did you have any idea the life it would have?
No, it wasn't. It certainly wasn't the intention.
That book caused a lot of drama.
Get your popcorn ready.
To spawn a sequel 15 years later or 14 years later, then a series after that, and now the books. Listen, it's a blessing. I wasn't expecting it, and certainly was not the intention.
If you could dissect it, what do you think the love of this franchise is? Why are we so connected to it after all these years?
I think it's a reflection of us, of Black folks in America. It's a reflection of our humanity, because everyone should be able to relate to people who are, falling in love, trying to figure out their next step in life, trying to figure out career choices. There's a relatability to the characters, and I think, a lot of people have said to me that they find this group to be their close friends.
Hi, everybody. I'll just put it out there. My last book was not the bestseller that I thought it would be, so there. Just put it out on the table.
Well, you know what they say. Every setback is a setup for a comeback.
What gave birth to the idea of a book series, a trilogy?
It's interesting. I've always loved the written word. And I thought, well, why don't I try my hand at writing a novel? These are already characters with backstory, characters that I'm familiar with. And here's an opportunity to delve into this form of storytelling.
Intimidated by it or excited by it? Well, how are you feeling?
No, not intimidated. I was excited by it for sure. It's intimidating because I hadn't done it before. But I wouldn't say it was. I wouldn't use the word intimidated. I was anxious to take it on, but at the same time knew I couldn't do it myself. So that's why I employed a partner in Jane Allen. Even though these are my characters, these are I know where I wanted to go. She helped to articulate some certain other things about and challenged me to say, okay, well, I understand you want to do this, but what if you think about that? So that's always a beautiful thing, and particularly having a woman who's of a background be a voice that I could bounce things off of was very was invaluable.
How different was this for you, this type of writing versus writing a script?
In a lot of ways it is freeing. You don't have those restrictions, so you can kind of blue sky it. You can say, okay, well, I want to travel to Ghana with Robin and, see what that's like. In fact, I took a trip over there last November to kind of get an idea of what life was like there for an African-American. So our story takes place in 4 different cities, 2 different continents. You get to use all 5 senses when you're writing the written word. You taste things, you can feel things, you can you smell things, and so it was great to, and also to more importantly, to get into the brains of these folks, dive into their subconscious in ways that we haven't been able to do in screenplays. Screenplays are limiting in that way. I mean, screenplays, turn into movies, but like you got to get somebody's permission to make that movie, or you got to get a lot of money to make that movie or that television show. It's not as much when you're having to do it, with the written word.
When did you realize the power of the work you do?
Well, knowing that like we had an uphill battle, when I see certain movies and like, they're just kind of willy-nilly about the depictions of Black people in particularly with Black filmmakers, I'm just like, we can't do that, right? I'm not saying everything has to be positive. That's not never the goal. But it's important to me to be authentic, and to have a three-dimensionality when we're talking about these characters. So, when did I realize? I don't know. I felt like the people that I wrote it for and about get it and understand it. I appreciate that that it resonates with them. The images and the storytelling resonates with them because I'm a storyteller first.
The novel releases July 1st. We've got more for you coming up.
I'm Efrem Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
And that's the hope, and that's the whole conceit of the show, is seeing Jesus through the eyes of those who met him.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
That was the moment that I knew that I was called to music.
Watch on CBNFamily.com or on the CBN News Channel.
Welcome back to Studio 5. Music helps us to bring you this show each and every week. And this week's soundtrack comes from this year's American Idol winner, Jamal Roberts. Take a listen, and you'll hear why Heal is what's playing in my ear.
And tell me something, tell me something less, because
On that musical note, we are just about out of time for this week's edition of Studio 5. So let's take a quick look at next week's rundown.
Officially, I don't play by your silly rules. We independent cause that's how I felt the spirit move.
We're in conversation with rapper No Big Deal.
I couldn't find him on the web or triple letter news. I saw him on the corner begging for some drugs and food.
Exploring his latest lyrics, his humble start, and his future plans.
NPR Tiny Desk, that's been a dream of mine for a long time. I just love the format. I love the musicianship that they bring in and the way that you can kind of represent your recorded songs in this live music format.
We disagreeing or we just politicians too?
We hope you'll join us for that and so much more come next week. As for this week, we've got time for just one more thing. Let's give the final word to Chef Deborah VanTrece.
So for someone who's watching you cook and thinking, I can do that, but I'm not sure I'm someone who can cook, what's your advice?
Well, I say just pay attention because the recipes, don't get intimidated by ingredients. Just pay attention because on some of the recipes, you'll see like this long list and people get scared and say, oh my God, I can't do that. Yes, you can. You know, I started out as a cook and I was a darn good cook that decided to go to school. And basically what school taught me is the name of the thing that I was already doing. You know, I knew how to make a pot roast. I didn't know it was being braised. I just know that's what you do, you know. I knew how to smother, you know, there's things that I knew, but I didn't know the proper concept name for those things. So don't get caught up with all of that and just know that some of my recipes, the ingredient list may be long, but it's just the layers of flavor that I'm trying to put in. So You know, it may be 18 ingredients. If you look at it, 10 of them are different spices. And it's just me creating the flavor that I want to create. You know, but the rest of the recipe, you know, the meat of it is pretty simple.
That is a great final word for this edition of Studio 5 and this week's look at uplifting entertainment. Until next time, make time to uplift someone around you, and then please come on back and see where Studio 5 takes you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.